You just don't fit in, Sophie. You're too old, too simple. It's just not the right setting for you." Those were the words. Not a scream, not a fight, but a calm, icy dismissal delivered over a lukewarm cup of tea. I looked at my daughter-in-law, Laura, in her designer silk blouse, and then I looked at my son, Daniel. My Daniel. The boy I'd stayed up with through every fever, the man I'd helped buy his first car. He didn't look at me. He looked at his shoes. He let her say it. He let her tell me I wasn't welcome at Christmas because I didn't match the furniture in their wealthy world. I'm 74 years old. I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at a woman. I'd buried a husband, survived a recession, and kept this little house by the sea standing through every storm. But nothing prepared me for the coldness of being told I was an embarrassment to my own flesh and blood. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt a strange, hollow clicking in my chest, like a door locking. Laura gave me that superior little smile, the one that says, "I've won." And Daniel finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "Laura thinks it's better if you don't come." Better. For them, not for me. As they drove away from my little cottage, leaving me in the silence of the crashing waves, I realized I wasn't just losing a holiday. I was being erased, but they forgot one thing. This simple old woman owned the one thing they wanted most. And by the time the sun rose on December 26th, I was going to make sure they knew exactly what it felt like to be left out in the cold. Subscribe and pull up a chair, honey. I need to tell you how I found my strength when my heart was in pieces. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing I have friends out there tonight. This is the story of how I took my life back. The silence that night was different. You know how the house usually feels like a hug? Well, that night, it felt like a tomb. My two cats, Barnaby and Pearl, could tell something was wrong. They didn't leave my side as I sat by the window, watching the moonlight hit the whitecaps. I kept hearing her voice. Too simple. Was it simple to work 2 jobs so Daniel could go to that fancy university? Was it simple to nurse my Henry until his last breath right here in this living room? I'd spent my whole life being simple so Daniel could be extraordinary. And this was my reward. Being tossed aside like a pair of old shoes that didn't go with a New Year's Eve dress. I thought about the house. This house. The house of dreams, Henry called it. We'd spent 40 years paying for this view. Every shingle, every floorboard was paid for with sweat and love. I'd always planned for it to be Daniel's. It was supposed to be his legacy. But as I sat there, the betrayal began to settle into my bones, turning from a dull ache into a sharp, cold clarity. Love is a two-way street, isn't it? We spend so much time as mothers telling ourselves that unconditional love means accepting any treatment our children give us. But that's a lie. Respect is the soil love grows in, and Daniel had just pulled the roots right out. The next morning, my friend Margaret showed up. You all have a Margaret, don't you? That friend who knows you're hurting before you even pick up the phone. She walked in with a tin of lemon bars, and one look at my face was all it took. She did it, didn't she? Margaret asked, setting the tin down. She talked him into leaving you behind? I told her everything. The words, the silence, the way Daniel wouldn't even meet my eyes. Margaret sat there, her face getting redder with every word I spoke. She's been my friend since our kids were in diapers, and she knew exactly what that house meant to me. Sophie, she said, leaning across the table, you've spent 70 years being the nice one. You've been the cushion everyone else lands on. What happens when the cushion moves? What happens when you decide you're worth more than their leftovers? Her words hit me like a splash of cold ocean water. I had been invisible because I allowed myself to be. I had made myself small so they could feel big. I looked at the old will sitting in my desk drawer, the one that left everything to Daniel, the one that would give Laura exactly what she wanted, a luxury beach house she'd probably sell in a week to buy a bigger condo in the city. I'm changing it, Margaret, I whispered. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a spark, not of anger, but of power. I'm changing everything. But I didn't know then that Daniel was already one step ahead of me. I didn't know that my own son was capable of something much darker than just a cruel remark. A few weeks after Christmas, a Christmas I spent with Margaret and a few dear friends, eating far too much turkey and trying to ignore the hole in my heart, I called my lawyer, Thomas. Thomas had been our family lawyer for 30 years. He was the one who helped Henry and me sign the deed to this house. He was a man I trusted. Thomas, I said when he answered, I need to come in. I need to make some significant changes to my estate. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Sophie, he said, and his voice sounded different, thin. I was actually going to call you about the updates Daniel requested. My heart stopped. What updates, Thomas? I haven't requested any updates. Daniel came in last week, Thomas stammered. He said you were having some memory issues. He said you'd discussed moving the house into a trust in his name now to make things easier for your future care. He had the papers, Sophie. He said you were on board. I felt the room tilt. Memory issues? My son, the boy I'd taught to be honest, the man I'd raised to be a protector, was telling people I was losing my mind so he could steal my home. It wasn't just Laura anymore. It was Daniel. He was actively trying to take the roof from over my head while I was still breathing under it. Thomas, I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed. I am as sharp as a tack, and you know it. If you've signed a single thing without my signature, you'd better start looking for a new career. I hung up. My hands were trembling so hard I dropped the phone. Have you ever felt that? That moment when the person you'd lay down your life for decides to treat you like a hurdle to be cleared? It's a pain that goes deeper than bone. It goes all the way to the soul. He thought I was too old. He thought I was too simple. He thought I'd just fade away into the fog of the sea and let him have his way. But he forgot who he got his iron will from. He forgot that I'm a woman who survived everything the Atlantic could throw at me. I didn't go back to Thomas. I went to a young man named Richard. He was sharp, his suit was pressed, and he didn't look at me like a grandmother. He looked at me like a client. When I told him what had happened, his face went hard. That's elder abuse and fraud, Sophie, he said. If your son went to your lawyer and misrepresented your mental state to gain control of assets, that's a war. Then let's go to war, Richard, I said. Because I'm not just fighting for a house. I'm fighting for the woman I used to be. The next few months were a blur of documents and depositions. I had to go to a doctor to prove I was of sound mind. Imagine that. Having to prove you're sane because your child wants your money. It was humiliating, standing there while a young doctor asked me who the president was and had me draw a clock face. I felt like a child. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered Laura's icy smile. I remembered Daniel's silence. Then came the phone calls. Oh, the calls from Daniel changed their tune real quick once the legal papers hit his door. He went from silent to pleading in 24 hours. "Mom, it's me," he said when I finally picked up. His voice had that soft, manipulative edge he used to use when he was 10 and wanted an extra scoop of ice cream. "This is all a big misunderstanding. Laura and I were just worried about you. We thought if we handled the house now, you wouldn't have to stress about the bills or the maintenance." "I've handled the bills for 50 years, Daniel," I said. I didn't suddenly forget how to write a check. "But Mom, the court case, it's going to be so expensive. It's going to ruin the family name." "Is that what you want? To be the woman who sued her only son over a piece of property?" "I'm not suing you over property, Daniel," I told him, and I've never felt more certain of anything. "I'm suing you for the truth. You tried to erase my voice. I'm just making sure the world hears it." He hung up on me. That was the last time we spoke before the hearing. The day of the court date was one of those gray, misty mornings where the ocean looks like lead. I wore my best navy suit, the one I wore to Henry's funeral. It felt like armor. Margaret drove me, holding my hand the whole way. "You're a lioness, Sophie," she kept saying. "Don't you forget it." Walking into that courtroom was like walking into a freezer. There they were, Daniel and Laura. She was dressed in black, looking like she was attending a funeral, mine, probably. Daniel looked tired. For a second, just a split second, my mother's heart wanted to reach out to him. I wanted to ask if he was eating well, if he was sleeping. But then he looked at me, and there was no love in his eyes, only resentment. He looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. The hearing was brutal. Their lawyer tried to bring up incidents, like the time I left the stove on, which happened once, 3 years ago, or the time I forgot a neighbor's name. They tried to paint a picture of a woman who was slipping away. But then Richard called Thomas to the stand. Poor Thomas. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Richard was relentless. "Did Daniel offer you a bonus for expedited processing of these documents? Did he suggest that his mother was confused during a meeting you weren't even present for?" Thomas cracked. He admitted it. He admitted Daniel had pressured him, promising that the family would keep their business with his firm for another generation if he just helped them out. The betrayal was laid bare in that room. The greed, the manipulation, it was all there. I looked at Daniel. He was white as a sheet. Laura was whispering furiously in his ear, probably already calculating how to distance herself from the mess. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was like a gavel itself. "I see no evidence of mental decline in this woman," she said, looking straight at me. But I see plenty of evidence of a son who has forgotten the meaning of the word honor. The house remains with Sophie. The fraudulent documents are void, and I am referring this matter for further investigation into the conduct of the legal counsel involved. I didn't feel like cheering. I just felt heavy. I'd won my house, but I'd officially lost my son. As we walked out, Daniel tried to stop me in the hallway. "Mom, wait," he said. I stopped and looked at him. Really looked at him. "Do you know what the worst part is, Daniel? It's not that you tried to take the house. It's that you thought I was so simple that I wouldn't fight for myself. You thought I was already gone." I walked away. I didn't look back. The weeks after the trial were quiet. The victory didn't feel like much at first. I sat in my house, and for a while, it felt tainted. I looked at the walls and saw the legal fees. I looked at the piano and heard the arguments. But then, slowly, the sea started to work its magic. I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't living for Henry, and I wasn't living for Daniel. I was just Sophie. I started doing things I'd always put off. I joined a painting class. Me, a woman who couldn't draw a straight line. I started taking long walks on the beach with Barnaby the cat. He actually walks on a leash. Can you believe that? My neighbors would laugh, and I'd laugh right back. But then, one rainy Tuesday, the phone rang. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't Margaret. It was Daniel. I almost didn't answer. My hand hovered over the receiver for a long time, but I realized that if I didn't answer, I was still letting the anger win. "Hello?" I said. "Mom, it's me." He sounded broken. No manipulative edge. No silkiness. Just a man who sounded like he'd finally hit the bottom. "Laura, she's gone, Mom. She left the day after the investigation started. Said she couldn't be associated with a scandal. She took everything she could carry." I sat down in my kitchen chair. I didn't feel happy about it. I just felt a profound sadness for him. He'd traded his mother for a woman who wouldn't even stay for the rain, let alone the storm. "I'm sorry, Daniel," I said, and I meant it. "I don't want the house, Mom," he sobbed. He was actually crying. "I don't want anything. I realized I don't have anyone. I threw away the only person who ever actually loved me for a woman who loved my potential inheritance. I'm so sorry. I know you can't forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either." I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't okay. What he did was a scar on my heart that will never fully fade. But I'm a mother, and a mother's heart is a strange, resilient thing. It's like the ocean. No matter how many things you throw into it, it just keeps moving, keeps washing the shore clean. "I can't forget what happened, Daniel," I told him. "And trust is something that takes years to build and seconds to break. But I'm not going to close the door on you. If you want to try, we can try. But you're coming to me. You're coming to this simple house, and you're going to sit at this simple table, and you're going to learn who your mother actually is." It's been 6 months since that call. Daniel comes over every Sunday now. He's different. He's quieter. He helps me in the garden without me asking. He doesn't look at his phone when I talk. We're rebuilding. It's slow. Lord, it's slow. Some days are hard. Some days I look at him and I still see the man who stood silent while his wife insulted me. But then I see the man who's trying, really trying. I learned that choosing peace isn't giving up. It's finally choosing yourself. Every mother gives pieces of herself away until she's practically a ghost in her own home. But we have to leave something for ourselves. We have to be our own house of dreams. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Daniel and I will ever be as close as we were when he was a boy. But I do know this. I'm 74 years old, and I've never felt more alive. I have my home, I have my dignity, and I have a son who finally sees me. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt invisible or cast aside by the ones you love, I want you to know it's never too late to stand up. It's never too late to reclaim your power. Please, share your stories in the comments. Have you ever had to make a hard choice between your family and your peace? I read every single one of them, and they mean the world to me. Remember, darling, you are never too simple. You are a masterpiece of a lifetime of love and survival, and it's never too late to come home to yourself. I'll see you in the next one. God bless.